Hey, everybody. Welcome to Moment of Clarity. So, light news day. Not much to talk about. I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about? Is there anything? I can't really think of any good topics for this episode. Holy shit. All right. I mean, didn't we all kind of think Trump's run would end with some sort of armed insurrection? Didn't we think that was a possibility here? Yeah. Holy Christ. So, so I'm not going to repeat all the details from the media because I imagine everybody's gotten those, right? You've seen the videos. You know that a bunch of people took the Capitol, and some of them at least were armed. One woman shot and killed. You got all of Congress ducking for cover in some quote unquote undisclosed location, which I think means under the building. They just like to say undisclosed location so no one goes looking for it. So I'm not going to get into all those details because I think you know them all. And if you want them, you can flip on CNN or whatever. I want to get into the stuff that is not being talked about on your mainstream media. The obvious stuff is that this is completely fucked, that this is violence. Which so is, police create violence as well. I want to make that clear. But this is, and Trump is obviously hugely responsible for this. But I also want to talk about some of the other things that are responsible for this that are not just Trump. Some of these people are terrorists. Literally, some left pipe bombs. Some of these people are armed white supremacists who want to kill certain groups of people because they exist, simply for existing. You are black, you should die, that kind of thing, that kind of horrific shit. So that is definitely some of these people. Then, I was 5 blocks from it earlier today. And so there's Trump people walking all around DC, and not all of them are white supremacist, horrible human beings. There are Trump people who are just kind of a little bit dopey, and they don't know what's going on, and they think Trump was trying to help people of America. I don't know what the problem is. Like, those people exist too. And it's sad they've fallen for this, but I want to get into how the mainstream media has helped them fall for this as well. And let's start though with, and this is not as far as I've seen. I've watched a lot of mainstream media coverage. This has not been talked about. They've been asking, how did this happen? How was there this failure of police? But they're not talking about the breathtaking difference between the police presence for this shit, for the white supremacist, Proud Boys, horrible bullshit, versus the police presence for Black Lives Matter protests, for J20 protests, for many protests. I was at a protest of like 25 people this past weekend, and some people were speaking from the steps of the Capitol, and you had cops come and say they were going to arrest them for standing on the steps of the Capitol and speaking at a peaceful protest of 25 people. Yet, for some odd reason, thousands of people are allowed to just basically take the Capitol building. And I know that you saw that the cops did try and stop them for a bit, but there were not that many cops, and they weren't trying that hard. And I want to show you this video. It's a short video, but the cops basically let them in to the Capitol. The cops decided for whatever reason that they were just not going to continue to try to stop these people from entering the Capitol. And this video shows them literally basically letting them in. So this is from Ben Rubenstein. He and his brother, Alex Rubenstein, do some great reporting. And anyway, here we go. Short video, but I think it makes the point.
Police are squabbling with protesters. Oh, there we go. they just breached the Capitol again.
So they're allowed in to the Capitol grounds to basically fucking riot inside the Capitol. So you've got this tiny police presence. Let's assume the cops weren't. I don't know why those cops pulled those barriers away, but let's assume the cops weren't actively trying to help them. You can still ask, why were there so few cops? Why are there fucking, like, you see like 12 cops not in riot gear up against tens of thousands of people? Meanwhile, you get 12 people for Black Lives Matter together, and they'll be surrounded by a group of riot cops and maced in the face. And this goes to show how our corporate state functions. If you are of the kind of white supremacist right-wing side of things, and many of them are, fascists. If you're on that side of things, then you largely have the police on your side. Now, as we saw, they ultimately stopped them from just hanging out in the Capitol forever, but they largely allowed a lot of it to happen, and there were not that many to deal with it happening in the first place. This is a choice. This doesn't happen by accident. This is the police state deciding that, large numbers of people, many of them, or at least some of them, white supremacist militia groups, are not a problem, not a risk to the ruling structure of America. Whereas small groups of Black people or Hispanic people, or even if you are a white anti-war people or leftist or socialist, people protesting for fucking healthcare or Occupy against Wall Street, those things are viewed as a much greater risk to the American ruling structure. Even though what ended up happening is fucking horrible. A woman died. You could have had, if they'd gotten 5 more feet, you could have had senators or representatives get hurt or attacked. And so it's like, but they let it get to that point because this is not viewed as great of a threat to the American ruling structure, that has existed and thrived on systemic racism for its entire history. And, these people, many of them, at least the worst of them, I want to leave out, I'm trying not to completely indict every dopey Trump follower who just doesn't understand what the fuck's going on and they think Trump was doing good things. They're dumb, but they're not. It's probably not a horrible person, but they're being led by militias and white supremacist groups that are fucking horrific human beings, and that's how this gets to this point. And so while the mainstream media has been asking the question, how did this happen? What's going on? Why aren't there enough cops? I've heard those questions being asked. But they're not talking about the fact that there's plenty of cops when it's other types of protests, when it's left-wing protests, when it's protesting for peace, when it's protesting against corporate America. Plenty of cops, fucking endless reams of cops covered in riot gear, arresting and beating people. And then once they escorted these people out of the Capitol, which took a fucking hour, it's like a little parade. Have you seen those fucking videos where it's just the people are like, okay, we'll leave. That was a good time, huh, guys? And the cops are like, all right, this way. Literally, the photo's too blurry or I'd show it to you, but literally I screenshotted on CNN. A cop was holding the hand of one of these protesters who was had bad legs or something, so couldn't walk down they were leaving. So the cops are escorting people out. This woman is leaving the Capitol steps and he's holding her hand as she's walking down the steps. This was an armed insurrection. I mean, that's what this was. And you're holding their fucking hands. That's the difference between when you are connected to just fucking fascist, white supremacist horse shit, horrible, horrible human beings. When you connect to them, the cops are like, they will hold their hands, help them walk down the steps. I don't even know. I mean, I assume some people must have been arrested, but they haven't been making a big deal out of that yet. But you watch. They'll probably arrest them and hold them for a few hours and then let them loose. Meanwhile, how long did they fucking prosecute the protesters at J20? Some of them were lawyers. And those were the protests against Trump's inauguration. And some of those were lawyers. Some of those were journalists that they prosecuted, and they wanted to lock them up for decades. And luckily, the case against them collapsed, and the jury wouldn't fall for it. But the government prosecution was trying to lock these people up for decades for peacefully protesting Trump's inauguration. I'm not saying everything was peaceful. I know some people set some cars on fire at Trump's inauguration, but that wasn't the people they arrested. They just kettled and arrested random people, including legal advisors and journalists. And our media won't even cover that. Like when that trial was going on, our media wouldn't cover it. Yet right now, they're willing to look at what went on today in the fucking Capitol and go, this is horrible. How could Trump let this happen? What is he doing? And I agree with that, but where the fuck were you? Where the fuck were you when other people were protesting this fucking shit show? Huh? But yeah, I mean, the difference in police and there are photos you can look up online of the Capitol steps at a Black Lives Matter protest is just squads of fucking militarized cops, just hundreds. I mean, I was at an anti-NATO protest in Chicago, and there were just buses of fucking stormtroopers like you haven't seen in your life. I just sat there and filmed them marching by for like 15 minutes. And that's to deal with a peaceful anti-NATO protest. And Here you literally have 10 or 20,000 people or whatever the number is storming the Capitol, and you got like 12 cops. You got like the meter maid who's like, all I have is a walkie-talkie. Should I just throw it at them? How do we stop them? I have yellow tape. Is that going to help? That's what they deployed to take on these fucking militias. So I also wanted to get into how our mainstream media has allowed this to happen, and our mainstream media and the other part of the ruling establishment outside of Trump. You don't need me to go through how Trump facilitated this. I think that's a given. I think you can watch any of the other channels, including Fox News. Fox News actually noticed. You can watch any of the other channels and hear what a fucking shit show Trump is, and how he's facilitated this and how he's encouraged this. But I want to get into, so since you can already watch that, I want to get into the redacted side of things, the censored side of things, which is you wouldn't have this. We wouldn't be at this point right now if you didn't have a media that has so successfully delegitimized itself that it allowed Trump to say that everything they say is false. So when they report an election result, all false. Everything's false. Now, we didn't get to that point where Trump could just declare himself the winner of election despite losing the election. And by the way, if you want to hear me talk about that, you can watch my previous videos. Yes, our elections are terrible in so many ways. One of the worst electoral systems in the Western world. However, Trump lost this election. He actually lost it by more than we are told because you have millions of people purged from the ballots. Just yesterday, I did a video on the 200,000 people, mostly people of color, purged from the voter rolls in Georgia. So he lost it by more than we're actually hearing he lost it by. But the reason he's able to say, I won this election by a landslide, which he just said in this latest video where he's telling the rioters or whatever, the people to go home. He says, I won this election by a landslide. Now, how do you get to a point that people believe that? How do you get to a point that people have no other place or not willing to look anywhere else for the information to find out whether that's actually true? Well, you have a mainstream media, a corporate media that willingly lies to you on a regular basis, just takes State Department talking points and just spews them out at you, all the way back to weapons of mass destruction. I mean, it goes all the way back to the Spanish-American War or some shit. But I mean, in recent times, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, the Afghanistan lies that we've been told to us every year for the past 20 years. I mean, we're just lied to again and again and again, ignoring all of the rigging that went on in the DNC primary and the Democratic primaries. Like, they have delegitimized themselves to such a level that now you can have a megalomaniacal, narcissistic fucking man-child as president and people believe him. And he can say to them, nothing else is true except what I say, because our media has successfully proven to people that they are just a fucking dumpster fire. They have done that themselves. And so when you hear them and you flip on CNN right now or MSNBC and or Fox News, you hear them, freaking out and pearl clutching and saying, how terrible this president is, that he lies to people. Yeah, he is terrible. And he does lie to people endlessly. And the reason that people believe that shit is because you motherfuckers delegitimized yourselves. You gutted any remaining belief in our mainstream media, in our corporate media, because you are fucking stooges and puppets for a corporate ruling class, and you do not represent average human beings. And so you created this system. You created this reality where Trump can lie to these people and they believe him, where I can talk to people that are ostensibly intelligent and agree with me on a lot of things, and they'll go, yeah, but Trump won this election by a landslide, right? And you're like, fucking no, I'm sorry. He didn't. Just because you heard Rudy Giuliani standing outside a landscaping company next to a porn shop say it, don't make it true. But I think the mainstream media doesn't understand they have themselves to thank for creating that reality. Really, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here unless they weren't just fucking worst, pathetic cowards that they are. I mean, the coward thing, factors into it too. The fact that they can't even stand up for like Julian Assange or Chelsea Manning or just so many people like I said, the journalists arrested at J20, the journalists arrested endlessly at all these protests. They can't speak out. Our mainstream media can't speak out to defend the protesters of these pipelines across America, or the protesters against police brutality. Our mainstream media woke up to some of that because it was kind of useful for like the MSNBC and CNN and stuff to talk about these Black Lives Matter protests, because it, it was a way to undermine Trump. So to them, it becomes useful. But for the most part, they were not doing a good job of covering it until it became useful. Another way that we've gotten to this point that that the reality, the foundation has been created for a con man carnival barker like Trump to put forward this shit and have people run after it and say, yeah, is the rigging of other elections, the rigging of our Democratic primaries. Anybody who follows my stuff, I've gone through it for years now as to how the DNC has rigged these primaries. I'm not going to go through them all again, but it's every step. It's the provisional ballots and the closing polling places and not giving Bernie Sanders any media time and et cetera, et cetera. And they did it again this time around. And they did it in order to thrust Joe Biden, who was not winning at all, who had lost the first few primaries, had no money in the bank, and was getting trounced for his third attempt at running for president. And yet they decided he was the guy that needed to be he was the only chance at keeping the ruling elite, the ruling establishment of the DNC in power. And so they fucking heaved him up there like, oh, and they forced him in there, and then he becomes the nominee. And then when he wins the election, people don't believe it. And they don't believe it because you fucking had to rig the primary to even get that guy in there. So you created a situation where it is believable that Biden lost. You created a situation where the actual popular candidates, like Bernie Sanders, attracting massive crowds, is undermined and trashed to an extent that, and along with the other rigging, the shadow app in Iowa that they did with the make sure to create chaos in Iowa, just every step along the way, they undermine him enough that Biden is able to become the nominee. And then when Biden wins, it doesn't seem believable. So by rigging your own primary, you created a reality where it doesn't seem believable that Biden could win. Now, Biden did win because of a pandemic, because of course, Trump has dealt with this pandemic the way he deals with everything, which is, what's it got to do with me? How can I make this about me? He found it fun to do the daily briefings at first because it made it about him. But then when he realized he wasn't #winning against a virus, he stopped doing any briefings. And so, without that pandemic and the corresponding economic collapse, Biden wouldn't have won. Biden would have gotten crushed. But it just so happens that you had a pandemic and essentially an economic collapse, even though Wall Street doesn't want to admit it, at the same time. And that allowed Biden to win. But by rigging your own primaries and by, doing it to destroy the actual popular candidate, Bernie Sanders, you created a foundation where people don't believe Biden won. And so when Trump goes out there and lies to their faces and says, I won by a landslide, people go, that sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. So, and that's on the media, and that's on our ruling politicians, the DNC, that's on them. But of course, none of that is mentioned in this, as you see these fucking clowns run through Congress, facilitated by police, or at least allowed. And I know there's photos out there of them looting the Capitol. One of them's holding the podium or something. Now, I don't know if any of them actually got out of there stealing anything. But I hope that I'm sure Trump will respond the same to that looting as he did to people, during the recent riots, stealing baby diapers because they fucking can't afford them because they've been fired from their job because corporate America is a fucking horrible parasitic force that just basically churns your lives into a gooey mush that they can then power their cars with. I hope he's as hard on those looters as the others, but something tells me he won't be. And I'll be interested to see what kind of prosecutions we see of these fucking insurrectionists running through Congress. Now I'm all for firing Congress, replacing them, protesting, but I'm a nonviolence guy because I'm anti-war, and I devoted my life to that. So yeah, if you're surprised I'm not for running into the Capitol with guns, then don't be. But people view this also as normal because we've created a death economy. Our entire economy runs on creating death and bombing around the world. And we're told that's good. We're told that's positive. We're told that's fine. And so when you create that understanding of the world, killing people to further an American empire is fine, then don't be surprised when that shit comes back, when that shit boomerangs back into your face, okay? When there's blowback. You've sent a generation of kids to fight in wars. They don't even understand what they are. They don't even understand where the country is on a map. They don't understand why we're at war with this country for 18, 19 straight years. And that shit comes back home. You have people with crazy PTSD who are often leading these groups the Proud Boys and the other white supremacist groups, the awful human beings, they're often led, even in those groups, are often led by ex-military, by people who say, oh, yeah, here's how to effectively kill and take over things. And yeah, that shit comes back. It's called blowback. And we have done that by having a death economy. We have an economy that does well when we create more death. And we could have a peace economy. We could have an economy that's based on creating a sustainable world, creating a cooperative world, creating a shared future where we actually have like a peaceful equality in a post-scarcity world where people are all have houses and are fed and clothed and don't have to fear that those things will disappear tomorrow. That's possible. But instead, our unfettered profit over all else economy and empire tells us the opposite, creates the opposite, furthers the opposite. So those are the main things that, I have one other point about how they're covering this right now, how they're covering this fucking armed insurrection at the Capitol. Could you imagine if this was one of the countries that our ruling elite want to harm, want to bring down, want to cause havoc in? If this same thing had happened in Hong Kong or in Venezuela or in Iran or in North Korea or any one of the nations that we turn the government turns their ire towards, because either we want to steal their resources or they have socialism or they are outside our central banking system, or sometimes it's all three and then we really want to fuck them up. Watch out, Venezuela. But if this had happened in any of those countries, this happened in Venezuela, how would they be covering this? It would be, pro-peace demonstrators take down dictatorial regime or something like that. Like, it would all be covered like this crazy positive thing that had happened in the capital of the United States. This was like a Juan Guaido moment. But when you read our newspapers, they talk about Juan Guaido like he's a fucking hero. He's a fucking coup monger in Venezuela who has tried to create a military coup, and yet they leave him loose to run around. So that was another point I wanted to make, that it's funny how we cover this completely differently when it's one of those countries we're trying to crush. You would see a completely different headlines, but instead, because it's here, they call it, some are even using the word terrorism, which I don't know if you've noticed, but that's rare when it's a right-winger. When it's a right-wing terrorist group, they don't call it terrorism, even though the vast majority, like 90-some% of terrorism in the United States comes from right-wing groups, comes from right-wing white supremacist groups. If you look at Charlottesville, where I was nearly killed, that's a terrorist act. If you look at the people that wanted to kidnap the governor of Michigan and execute her, that's a terrorist group. If you look at what the fuck's his name in Portland? This was in where was it? In Minnesota. The guy that shot two people or killed two people, I think. He's a terrorist, and now I think he's currently out on bail. These are terrorist acts. And of course, all of our police that walk around and shoot black people 7 times in the back and then claim they were coming at them. I feared for my life because I didn't know what his back might do to me. The back of his hair looked like a monster. So I shot him. Those are terrorist acts too. But most of that is never called terrorism in our mainstream media, in our corporate media. That terrorism is reserved for anything done by non-white people or done by left-wing people. So if you're an environmentalist and you strap yourself to a pipeline, that's eco-terrorism, right? So that's the term terrorism is reserved for those things. Stuff done by non-white people or stuff done by left-wing people. The other side is they're called like they might say militia, an armed militiaman or something, but they almost never use the word terrorism. Now, I have heard at least once on CNN today they called this a terrorist act. These people ran into the Capitol. There was at least some firing of weapons, and one protester was killed. I assume that shot was fired by the police. I don't know the situation around it, except that she was killed. But anyway, that's an important term to keep your eye on, because it's funny how terrorism is only done by other countries to us. We never do terrorism to other countries. It's only done to us. And the homegrown terrorism isn't called terrorism. Even mass shootings, even mass shooters are often not called terrorists. They're called, I'm not saying they're called nice things. They're called murderers and shit, but they reserve the word terrorist for that's left wingers, peaceniks, and foreign countries. But all right. I'm going to wrap it up here. Let me know if you have any other questions. Juan Guaido is a fucking good bastard puppet. Okay. I agree, by the way. Totally in agreement there. I don't know if this is true that Sean Hannity has said this was done by Antifa, but that's hilarious. Because no. I did hear someone saying something about Antifa. It's like, in all the videos I watched of the people storming that Capitol and the people outside the Capitol, I didn't see any Antifa anywhere. So I don't know where the fuck you were looking. Looked like a shitload of Trump flags to me. Cindy says we should arrest all white supremacist group leaders. Thanks for the donation, by the way. Stars Girl says, I'm with Marianne Williamson, create the Department of Peace. G&D, gross national equals fixed infrastructure. Oh, Green New Deal. I was thinking of gross domestic product and then gross national product, but Green New Deal equals fixed infrastructure and build an interstate national train system, defund the Pentagon. I agree with all that. The one problem with the Department of Peace, which I actually, they absolutely should work towards peace, but the one problem with the Department of Peace is I think if we had one, it'd be like one dude and someone would assassinate him. Or really it'd be one woman, because women generally tend to be the actual drive for peace. Men more often are the drive for fucking horror show. I realize I'm stereotyping. Deal with it. So Mike asks, why does the working class fight each other when the real enemy is the ruling capitalist and political class? So this is a great point, and it's at the heart of a lot of what's going on right now. Because, and that's why I was trying to differentiate to some degree of these Trump supporters that are, and like I said, I've been walking past them on the streets of DC. Some of them are clearly awful militia shitheads, and others are clearly rather dumpy older people who are having some difficulty walking places. DC is very large and spread out, and you got to park like 8 miles away if you want to go partake in an armed insurrection. So they're having trouble walking, and they got their Trump flag, and you're like, why are they here? The militia fucking shitheads. You're like, all right, they want to harm people of color, so that's why they're here. But why is the dumpy couple with the fishing hat on and the Trump flag, why are they here? And it's why all these people voted for Trump. Millions of people across this country voted for Trump. And it's because they've been so brutally traumatized by this fucking profit over people system, by this capitalist system that is one of the most unequal one of the most unequal societies that fucking ever. The Gini coefficient in this country is worse than ancient Rome before its collapse. The inequality is immense. And when you are that oppressed and you're not studying this shit all day, every day, you look to who to blame. Who do I blame? And when a carnival barker shows up and says, hey, I'm different. I'm like you. I hate the media. I'm like you. I hate these clowns in Congress. And a lot of people go, I'm with him. He hates the clowns in Congress. I hate the clowns in Congress. I'm with that guy. He's never been a politician. Great. Awesome. He's like a TV show host. Cool. And they're able to be confused into supporting a con man, a fascist, a megalomaniacal fucking orange-headed beast because of the way they've been exploited and the way their media has lied to them. And as I spent the first half of this episode saying, you wouldn't end up here without a completely bought off, pathetic mainstream media that has lied to us every step of the way. That's how you get here. All right. Hope you enjoyed this. Please share it. Please let people know. And, let's keep fighting for a better world because I don't think today is headed in the right direction for that better world. Stay safe out there. Protect your family and friends. Keep fighting.